dancing with you undercover.
Hi everyone, my name is Declan McGlynn, and today we are super excited to be joined by a DJ and producer. His new album Rise is just about out now and on Juna Deep, and we're going to talk a little bit about his track Undercover featuring Matthew Deere and look into his Ableton Live process. So please welcome, hey Nate, how you doing, man?
Good, thanks.
Welcome to Point Blank.
Thank you for having me.
So before we dive into Ableton and your production process and stuff like that, how did you first get into making music and electronic music specifically?
Yeah, so I just started, like I think a lot of people, I had piano lessons as a kid, and then played in some bands when I was very, very young, like with my sister just in the garage, kind of doing Nirvana covers and stuff.
Classic.
And then electronic music for me started with hip hop when I was 13, 14 or so. I was really, really into like DJ Premier and Pete Rock kind of productions at the time. And so I bought a keyboard and a drum machine and sort of have been hooked on that style of making music ever since. And I started on software like a few years later with a program called FL Studio, or it was Fruity Loops back then.
Yeah. Were you trying to do like hip hop DJing at the time, like turntablism and stuff?
I like, I had a turntable. I was 13, like I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could like even learn these things. I was too intimidated, I guess, to ask anyone. And so I was like trying to work out like how you could scratch just on one turntable, and like couldn't figure it out. Like I didn't even have a mixer. It was just hooked into like an amplifier. And so like I was just like, okay, this DJing thing like is not for me. I'm just gonna like make music and just do it that way. So that was kind of the start of the whole thing. And then later I sort of actually figured out how to DJ.
What were those first tracks like?
The first ones, yeah, I mean the first ones were just like a Yamaha keyboard with like a bunch of stock sounds on it, like hooked over MIDI to a drum machine. And I just recorded it into like a Tascam 4-track.
Right. And all of that was influenced or at least inspired by your piano lessons, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been kind of something that I rely on, I guess, when I'm writing. Like definitely when I was just jamming on the keyboard as a young kid, like I was just using like kind of scales and chords and stuff that I had learned. But yeah, like as time went on and I used software more and more, I relied on that less. I mean, I still, when I do like a live session, I'll play keys, but I find now myself using more just like clicking in notes and stuff, which I think it's better because when you just play and rely on like your muscle memory of like the chord progressions that you always just end up writing the same one
stuff,
over and over again. And I found myself doing that, like even in this project, like I had a bunch of tracks that were like the exact same chord progression. I didn't even realize it because it was just the muscle memory that I knew.
Yeah. And you're drawn to chords too, as
yeah, and I'm doing the same
develops.
F, A minor, G shit over and over again. So yeah, now I just kind of use a lot of mouse clicking, which is not really that exciting, but I think it results in a better product in the end.
Yeah, totally. So this project, I mean, you developed obviously from FL to Ableton.
Yeah.
When did that switch happen and why?
It started maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just because I wanted to like start making mixtapes, just like studio mixes, which Ableton is kind of really, for me, the only way to do that, besides just doing it like in Tractor or whatever. But yeah, things like the multiband compressor and the saturator and things like that, I just enjoyed using them a lot more. And the soft synths actually as well, I use quite often.
Yeah, and you're primarily soft synth based.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the Arturia stuff or Massive or Silent or whatever.
Yeah. So shall we take a look at this track? And do you want to introduce it, how it came about?
Yeah, so this track is, like you said, it's called Undercover. It was written just as an instrumental, like most of my stuff starts. And like basically the instrumental track as you hear it now is not tremendously different from like what I sent to Matthew Deere. And that whole thing came about, I mean, my manager asked me like, hey, like who would you like to work with on the album? That was 6-7 months ago. And he was one of the first people that I said, and was quite surprised that he wanted to do the track. And so he recorded vocals at home in his studio in Detroit and sent them over. And so we just did it completely online. back and forth that way. Yeah, once it was all done, I kind of mixed down the record, which I'll show you here, and that was it. That's what you'll hear.
So shall we take a listen to it?
Yeah, I'll just play you. I'm gonna like start in the middle of the track. I'll play you like the kind of bridge verse going into like the main full section,
cool.
so you get a good idea of it.
We don't have to talk about we on you without love is when you get away from what holds you down. Pull my feathers out for you to see me shout. Fly beside me, never knew you had another round. We won't talk about when the kids are down. Tribulations of somebody who let me down. Up away again, throw the shackles out. Freedom brighter in the methods when you taught me how. Freedom brighter in the methods when you taught me how.
Yeah, that's a kind of good snapshot of
Yeah.
the basic elements there.
So it's kind of based around that ARP and chord structure.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start because that's a lot. I find myself a lot of the time now starting with something like that, and this track actually starts like that. Like this is just the master playing, and it's like that's how it starts, just with that da-na-na-na, which is super simple. I think I made it in Silence. It's just like a sawtooth with some white noise on it, which is probably in audio now. But what I find myself doing a lot of the time is starting with that like very simple arpeggiated kind of melody or just something very static and simple. And then what I like to do is like move the bass notes around that to create sort of the harmonic foundation of the track. Like this melody here, this da-na-na-na, it kind of sticks in your head. In and of itself, it's not really that interesting, but with the right kind of bass notes underneath it, I think it becomes like actually quite kind of emotional. And so that's sort of the beginning of the track. There's like a Wurlitzer kind of part that comes in the intro that provides those bass notes that give you that satisfying kind of, oh, okay, there's the foundation, there are the chord changes, and you still have this thing playing constantly in the background. I'm gonna mute the vocals for now because I think it's kind of interesting to see how the actual instrumental developed because that's what came first and the vocals came later, and I adjusted some of the instrumental to kind of fit the vocal. So that lead synth here, it's just like I said, it's just like an out from Silent with a sawtooth, and the only thing that's on it is it's got an LFO on the pitch that's kind of going up and down and getting quicker and slower. And then the only other thing going on really in the intro is this Wurlitzer.
And that's in MIDI.
That is still in MIDI. That's just like the Ableton one. It's, yeah. And I'll always just load in like especially electric, which is the one where you have like all the Rhodes, pianos, models and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll just load in a preset and then just kind of mess around with the controls until it sounds right. And with this particular one, I've just sort of, I've automated the stiffness on it, which is just sort of giving it a little bit of motion. So as the intro goes on, it's getting a little bit like harder, and also the filter is going up on it. So yeah, we've just got like a low pass here, and it's like starting at like 700 hertz or so. So like it's actually quite like muffled in the beginning, which is where the vocal first comes in, and that decision was probably made to kind of give some room in the high end for the vocal. I mean, one other thing that I do that like it's not really that exciting, but like I've just recorded a bunch of like live recordings. It's quite quiet here, so I don't know if we can hear it, but I just take like a portable recorder and like go in a train station or whatever, and just hit record and it has this like sort of hissy, like, I don't know, it's got like a certain magic to it, and there's some unpredictable things that happen, like if someone bumps into you, or like someone walks by with a rolly suitcase and it makes a funny noise.
Yeah.
And like you barely hear it, but I
think that's actually a really good point, because if you're making like loop-based music, that can throw the ear off.
Exactly. That's like one thing.
Repeating.
That's like one different thing that you can do that makes it kind of like, oh, okay, that's not like a 16-bar loop or an 8-bar loop.
Yeah.
And like I cut all the low end out of it because I think it's usually I'll usually make it wide, like I'll delay left and right like 25 milliseconds or something, so it's super wide. Because like the only thing I don't want is for it to get in the way of like anything important, like kick or bass, which are like right down the middle. But yeah, you can hear like those little kind of thing. I don't know, someone like throwing a tissue into the trash can or like whatever it is. Every time I record that, it's like, oh my God, it's so cool once I put it in. So I always do that. It's also great when you have like a section of the track where it just breaks down, it's just kick and bass, and there's not that much high end going. You really like can hear it. It's not like annoying, but it's there and it's interesting. And then we'll just go back to the master here. Like there's just sort of like a stuttered kick pattern that comes in. Which is just sort of providing a little bit of rhythm, like, and yeah, I think it's sometimes also when there's not a lot of drums going on, it's like good to help people like find the downbeat sometimes. So yeah, and then like with like reverses and white noise stuff, I always try to make it a bit different, like than just like pasting in just a reverse cymbal.
Yeah,
like
on a sample pack, yeah.
Exactly. So like that is like the sample itself is like a Vengeance one, like from I think this is Vengeance Trance.
Yes.
Which I did buy.
It works.
And I stand by that decision. No, but I mean, okay, so like what I've done to it is just like, if we can just solo this here, I've just put like a gate on it, so it's doing that.
Yeah.
So like that just in and of itself, like
well,
that makes it not like I'm a sample.
Yeah.
Because I hate that, and I hate when I hear it in tracks, like when you just like put a Vengeance white noise sweep in, like it just immediately turns me off.
Yeah.
So I'll always do something like that to it, just to give it a bit of something that it needs. And then like I also have like a little white noise thing that I just made in analog here. Which is just analog with the oscillator turned to noise.
Right.
And then it's like drawn in like rhythmically, so it's kind of doing a bit of swelling, and then it just has like the low end taken out and some reverb, and like the filter is a little bit resonating. I think like if you do those things yourself, it does pay dividends, because it just, for people, like for DJs especially, and people who make music, like we all have the same sample packs and stuff, like we all know them, and they notice, like people do notice, like if you use kind of just a stock sound and just like drop it in, like it'll be like, it's kind of not that great. So that's something that I always do.
Yeah.
And with the white noise stuff, I think it's cool to do it rhythmically. So I think that's a good trick also. Yeah.
Cool. So the drums kind of drop straight after that white noise bit, right? The kick drops.
Yeah, so we can get into the meat of the track now, which is there's like a little 8-bar section where it gets like very spacey here. And that white noise buildup comes, and then and this section actually ended up becoming the chorus. But yeah, like as an instrumental, it wasn't really made that way. It was just made like this would be like the main groove. So the kick drum, I think, is very simple. It's like what I do is I've just got like 50 kicks basically that I use, and I don't really look for anything else, because I've pretty much have the kicks that I want, and the only thing that I'll do is like I'll add once in a while a few kicks, like, and I don't. This is not like I'm not like proud of this, or I know it's probably not technically legal, but I just rip them from tracks that I like.
Yeah.
Like from any genre, I'll just like go through. Sometimes I downloaded an old like 2009 Funk Agenda track the other day that has an amazing kick just alone in the intro, and I just took it, and that's like, I think that one or so. I think it really helps, because the worst thing is when you're trying to start a track and trying to find like a good kick drum, and you're just like going through like 40 different sample packs, and like usually sample pack kicks are terrible. They're not good at all.
Yeah. They tend to be overproduced and quite massive.
Or like what I find is they have way too much high end, and like even if you filter them, they still sound like kind of weird. So I just have these ones, and I just cheat, and I just do it that way. So this is just one of those kicks, and yeah, I mean it's just playing in there. I think it's like it's a good kick. It's like got good kind of subby low end.
Yeah, it's got it'll cut through on laptop
but it also,
speakers as well,
exactly. It's a little bit like thwacky. That's about as much high end as I would want in a kick. I think in like kind of more energetic styles of music, you obviously need more kind of, you might layer a hi-hat on or something like that. And I've done that before. Like on the Eric Prydz remix that I did, I remember that kick was like 3 parts layered together, because it's like quite a like energetic track, at least for me. But for this sort of thing, I would always use something that just has a click and that sort of subby underneath. I remember doing the loop, like the drum loop first, and so I would imagine that I like did the bass around the kick. But that's the other thing to consider, is because this kick is like probably like 45 to 50 hertz, like fundamental. I would never put like a very like subby bass with this kick. Yeah. Like it just doesn't work. And so I would just make sure that the bass is going over it, and maybe put like a tiny bit of sub underneath, but like very low volume. And then there's a few other percussion bits going on. I'll just play the drums. There's just like an offbeat thing here, which is, I mean, I freeze everything after a while. But it's always just like when I'm making the loops, it's just a matter of like layering enough stuff. That's just like a loop pitched down, and just like taking a small piece of it.
And those loops are from sample packs?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, like these are just obviously one shots with a bit of delay on it. And then I put a lot of, like, I do a lot of percussion stuff with the delay, just because it helps kind of groove a bit.
Any favorite delay plugin for that?
I would just use the stock Ableton one.
Simple delay.
Yeah, the simple delay. Because it's easy enough, and if you actually want to change, you can just switch it out of like beat sync mode and just adjust the milliseconds. But usually I'll just stick one to like an 1/8 note, and the other one to like 3/8 notes or something like that, and just call it a day.
Done.
Yeah. So that's kind of it. And then there's just it's like very quiet, this one, but that's just like a break sample, like from some drum break that I probably pulled from some YouTube record even, like it can be anywhere. And like one thing that I always do is there's a shaker loop there. That's I don't know, like if people are interested in shaker loops, I found an amazing one from a company called Noise Firm. They've got this like thing called Complete Shaker, which is like 15 gigs of shaker and tambourine like loops. So it's like played really, really nicely, and like with lots of variations. So I really like that. I use a lot of those. There's nothing on the 2 and 4 because I'm saving it for the second section. And that's something that I always do, like with melodic elements as well. I try not to reveal the whole thing on the first like main section that you hear, because I want to kind of make an incentive to keep listening to that final payoff when it's like, okay, everything's now working together.
Yeah.
And then like the melodic elements, in that section are just, it's just the Rhodes, or the Wurlitzer, excuse me, and that main synth there, with a bit of sidechain on. What I'll usually do is, like, I'll bus everything out. So like I have a drum group, which is all the drums, and then I'll have a music group, which is all the music, like synth music. And then, and bass is another group. And then the vocals will be another group. So it's just like 3 groups, basically.
Would you mix that way as well? So process the
That's
groups
how I
rather
mix
than,
it too, yeah. And the other thing worth mentioning, I guess, is like on the drums especially, is that I'll use a send. I'll use 2 sends actually. I'll use like a room send, which is this one. And it's just like an Ableton reverb, like 2.5 seconds, and the low end's taken out, and it's sidechained a bit. It's pretty simple. But I think if you send everything to one room, it sounds like the music's all kind of together, rather than like putting individual reverbs on each channel. And also doing it that way, like if you put individual insert reverbs, then it's a lot more taxing on the computer. So, and this computer is very old, so like that's not an option for me. And then the other send that I usually use is like a bit of distortion and compression. So if we go back, sorry, I keep like jumping back and forth here, but so the drums are being sent to like a tube warmer kind of that's like driving it a bit and distorting, and then compressing it. It's just like, it's essentially parallel compression just done as a send. And it makes a really, really big difference, like especially with getting your track to be like sort of competitive on a loudness level. Like I'll play like without it, and then
yeah, totally.
It's a big difference, and it's not really adding that much headroom just because it's so compressed. It's like, you know, it's barely even hitting -18, and the drums are hitting like -4 or 5.
Yeah. So it just thickens it up.
It's thickening it up, it's providing extra high end. The low end's taken out too. I usually cut like 100 hertz or so. So, because otherwise it's just like the level's going way up. And like what I'll do with that is I'll play the main drum loop, and then I'll just adjust this like by hand so it's like at the right level. Because it's always like if you turn it all the way up, it's way too much, and if you, so you just have to like actually kind of do it by ear. And then I'll leave it there, and I won't touch it. And this is being sent like not even the full amount. And then the bridge, or like the kind of breakdown, I guess here, the kick goes out, like the main like bassy kick, but I've added like a reverbed kick, like, which is just like,
it's like classic. Is that 707?
It's like from an 80s sample pack.
Yeah.
And it's just a sample. There's literally nothing on it, and I've just filtered out some of the high end because it was a little bit too much. It was a bit, it was a bit
really
too
clicky.
much. So what I'm doing in this section is just introducing a bunch of new melodic elements and percussion elements, and so I'll just kind of play the drums here. So we've got like a ride cymbal that's going to come in that becomes like a pretty important part of the percussion there. I like to play the ride like on different notes in the MIDI. I think it creates like a really cool effect. So right now it's just playing like pretty straight on the offbeat. But then like at the end of each like 4 or 8 bar section, I'll do like a little like fill, like where it goes down. Like that. I don't know, it's like stuff like that is like what makes it.
But it's interesting because you've got volume automation on that snare roll. There's like a filter automation on that. There's volume automation on the ride. There's some fills. There's the train station recording. All of that, even though it's quite subtle, when you put it all together, the track is constantly evolving.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like everything needs to be moving, and not like in a like distracting, like look at me way, but in like a way that makes it an interesting experience. And I came from, like when I was a kid, I always listened to music on headphones. That's how I consumed music. And I was always drawn to music that was detailed, like, because when you're listening on headphones, you get certain details that you just miss over speakers.
Yeah.
And then like finally right before everything kind of drops in, the clap comes in like right before, and
Yeah, it's interesting it comes in like 2 bars early, isn't it?
yeah.
2 bars earlier than you'd expect.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like, I don't know, that's another trick that I always do. Like I hate when it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, new element. Like
Yeah.
I don't like that. I mean, sometimes I do it sometimes, and sometimes it's fine. But usually like I'll always, like if there's an offbeat hi-hat coming in, I'll always start at like on the 4th beat of the measure prior to the one where you actually want to introduce it. And the other thing I like to do, which I do a lot, is everything is sidechained to this kick, like this main kick thing, this channel that we already went over. And what I'll do is I'll just, so what I'll do is I'll have 2 notes going on, but the volume's all the way down. So everything's ducking the kick, even though the kick's not playing. And it creates this cool sort of effect where there's sidechaining happening, even though nothing like is actually triggering that sidechain that you hear. But it sort of prepares you for the music to kind of start to duck, because when all of a sudden the kick drops and the music goes way down, it can be kind of jarring, because you were listening to the piano and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, like holy, whoa, that was weird. So what I'll do is this section here, it'll start ducking right there already, like the bass and the. Yeah. And then it's not such a surprise when it ducks when the kick drum actually does come in. So that's another trick that I do all the time. The bass is just like very basic. It's just like a Reese sort of sample from it's Tom Middleton's sample pack. It's pretty quiet, like the level. I think it's only, it's like -18.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned before, the kick itself.
The kick
has so much sub in it.
The kick has the energy.
Yeah.
And like I don't want to mess with that. It is still sidechained, the bass, because it's occupying the same general area. This is an amazing plugin that I use always. It's free. It's called Density. It's by a company called Variety of Sound. It's just a free compressor that adds a little bit of like saturation. And I'll always put that just like doing like 2 to 3 dB off, just to keep the signal a little bit steadier. And then, it's just sidechained a bit. Like everybody knows how to sidechain. I don't need to discuss that. And then like in this bridge section, this like saw loop kind of gets automated up, and that's providing like a harmonic kind of counterpart. Which is sort of, it's a totally different pattern. It's going up all the time, whereas the bass is kind of going like up and down. But I think it just heightens the emotion there. Like before, if you just keep like the same elements, it's hard to keep building tension and to keep like heightening the emotion of the track because the last chorus should be the biggest one, right? Yeah. And so like all this stuff that I'm doing is basically serving that last chorus, like trying to prop it up and make it the biggest thing that it can possibly be. So I'm bringing in like a new harmonic element, and I'm bringing in that clap finally. That's all just done to kind of make that last chorus really pop off and be like the epic moment of the track. And I do that almost every track that I do. Is like some kind of trick to make that happen. So with the vocals, like I've just frozen them because there were quite a lot of effects. The basic idea, like I'll take low end out, I'll compress them a bit just to keep control of the dynamics. And then just like EQ out some like nasty frequencies. But with this one, like Matthew had worked on them already quite a bit at home, like put some kind of some outboard like effects on them.
Cool. So on the master, just to finish up, would you usually process your master bus when you're making tracks, or would you go to the end?
I'll do a little bit. I'm just adding a bit of high, like 2 dB. I really like the Waves EQ. That's my like go-to. And then like this free plugin, I'm using it all the time. I just take a little bit out, just a flicker, It's just to control it a bit. And then the limiter, it's not doing anything. It's just there, just in case. It's more for like if I don't want to like blow my speakers at home, actually. I made a few edits to some of the parts, like especially like the Wurlitzer. Like here you can see like it's sort of, the stiffness is going up and it's getting more intense. Like that's very like twangy, but then it like jumps down right before the vocals come in, so it doesn't get in the way. So that's like the basic, thinking behind the track, I guess. And then it's got like a little string outro, like I've just like done some contact strings.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Nice one, cool. Nice one. So hopefully you got plenty of tips from that. And if you want to learn more about Ableton and music production, make sure you check out our courses at pointblanklondon.com.
Let it dream.